Well, hello there, friends. Welcome back to the Doing What Matters podcast. My name is Teresa McCloy. Erica is absent today, but that's okay because we've got two other great guests on the podcast today. This is going to feel like just a great conversation with Mary Valloni and Mike Kim. So, welcome in, guys.
Hey, Teresa.
I've been looking forward to, first of all, talking about your new book. We do have to mention and talk about that. But I want to go a little bit deeper in a little different direction as well with just this friendship and partnership and crazy relationship that the two of you have. So I think that'll be a fun conversation too. I'm ready to dive in. How about you two?
Ready?
I can't wait.
We are not sure what's going to come out of this, but it's going to be good, whatever it is. I want to dive into the book. So where did the why come for this book? Whoever wants to start out, what's the why behind you guys finally going, let's put a book together and put it out in the market?
Okay. I feel like we can have two completely different answers. So I'm not going to say Mary first because she's the heart behind everything that we do. And I'm the dark side. We're like light side, dark side. So you go first and then everyone will realize how this really works.
Okay. All right. Let's just go back a few years. So Mike and I started our partnership in 2017, and we can talk about that a little later. But when I first met Mike in person, he sat down and mapped out an entire business plan. And he had book on the list of all the many things that we were going to do together. So from day one of us talking about even working together, we've always talked about a book. So that was always in the back of my mind. But I thought it was going to happen in 2019, maybe 2020. So we began the process. We were pulling content. We were working on it. I was writing chapters. We had a ghostwriter that was starting to pull our content together, but it just sat there and sat there. And then what was it? Like last year and a half ago, I decided that I'm going to pick up and move to Mexico. I'm just like, I need some time. I really felt like the Lord was telling me, you need to slow down, like just take some time. And I said, Mike, I need you to step in. I can't run our calls. And the next thing I know, we're pulling the book together and he's just like behind the scenes, like, here's chapter 1, here's chapter 3, 4, 5, 6. And it was like, and before we knew it, Mike had this thing completely compiled and was like, if I die tomorrow, you're welcome. I did my part. You're welcome. And I had no anticipation that this book was going to fly as fast as it did. But Mike had something, I don't even know. He can tell the story on that. But something happened and the switch was flipped and all of a sudden he was running. And I will say Mike is the writer of our team. I love to write. I wrote my own book. Mike wrote his own book. But I would say out of the two of us, he's the one that enjoys writing more than I do. And so when he put his hand to it, I was like, this is going to be so good. This book is going to do better than any book that we probably ever will write.
So, Mike, let's hear your version of that story. I would get to hear about it through a different lens. So, Mike, tell us your version.
Yeah, we wrote the book. Our target audience in the book are Christian missionaries, specifically Christian missionaries. If you're a ministry leader that needs to raise support for a parachurch organization, cool, these principles will help you. If you're raising money for a church plant, cool, these principles will help you. But we really targeted toward a very clear reader, somebody who's on the mission field or trying to go, raising personal support and also ministry support, often under the umbrella of a sending organization that, no offense, doesn't really equip them to raise money in today's modern world. And Mary and I were just like peanut butter and jelly when we met. We've never signed a contract with one another. Like for years, my attorneys were like, this is crazy. Her attorneys were like, this is crazy. I was like, no, this is just, we feel like there's this call and this assignment. I joke that she cares about people. We've got to get this book into people's hands. We've got to get our work into people's hands. Me, Teresa, you know me well too. I'm just like, no, I have to do it because if I don't, I will hate myself while I'm dying. I have this sense of duty to release creative projects or whatever's inside of me. I have to get it out. I have to expend the energy and make something out of it. I do love our people. I care about them. They've been my community of faith, whether they know it or not, for many years now. Mary just mentioned she moved to Mexico and she's like, I need a couple months off. There's so much going on. I was like, cool, it's my turn to carry the load. And all in all, we, in the first probably 5 years of our partnership, I just did it because I loved Mary. I loved working with her. She was just a great friend. She was really there for me in some really hard times. And I can speak more openly about this on this platform. We're all Christ followers, but I was a knucklehead for a little while, especially after divorce. And she definitely was like, are you alive? Are you going to die? Make good decisions. Make smart decisions. And she was like the big sister that I needed at that point, even though I'm older than her. And so that was the impetus behind it. And then it got to a point where I got a lot of these other creative projects done. And Mary was out of it for a while because she needed a little bit of a break. And I was closer to the material and the people that we were helping. This has got to happen. And I promised her that the book would be done and I would give her a birthday present, and I got it done in time. So that's what we did. And then we published it a couple months later, but the manuscript was done. I actually hate writing. I love having written something, but I hate the process of writing. But then I enjoy looking at it. I'm like, oh, okay, I made something. This is good. All three of us are authors. I think we've all been there at times.
So what I love, though, is I read the book, and I have read the book. And what I love is, because I do know both of you and I've read both of your previous books, is how this feels like both of your best work coming together for this bigger purpose and cause that matters deeply to both of you, because the audience is so important in the work that you're doing. And you both have taken skill sets that you have and said, okay, as you said, this has not been taught well. And I come from ministry background, all of that. My brother was on the mission field for a while. I know the behind the scenes of all this, like both of you do. And it's just, oh, we can't do that because that's in the secular world or whatever. And I love the line, and I want to go there, about the Christian jargon. That's one of my favorite parts of the book. Like how we have this division and how you guys both said, you know what? This works everywhere. There's nothing like over here, we should market this way. Like storytelling and the depth of story and the way that you connect with story and raise funds. So yeah, beautiful work, beautiful things, but yet so practical, right? Just go take the book and put it into action. So I will say this before we go a little bit further. If you know of someone who this is their space, make sure they have this book. Mary, let me ask you, that specific target, where did that come for you to know it's these people right here?
Yeah. Fully Funded was something that Mike was actually working on before I met him. And so it's really interesting because he actually launched the Fully Funded podcast before we even met. And I was in the background watching his journey because a mutual friend of ours, Carrie Oberbrunner, was just, as soon as Carrie met me when I was writing my book, he says, you need to know my friend Mike. I am not in the online space whatsoever. I am working for the American Cancer Society, just became a consultant in the nonprofit space. Hey, great. So I saw he had a podcast and I was like, oh, he's a big deal. Okay, this guy's in the marketing space and he's doing some really cool stuff. And I binge listened to the first 60 episodes of Mike's podcast. And so as I was going through that information, I found out he was launching this Fully Funded podcast. And so I started listening, and I love Mike, but whoever Mike's partner was at the time, I was just saying, why, God? Why am I not the one? Like I literally was feeling
Why
like,
am I not the other half?
I should be in this podcast. Fast forward a few years, and I was co-hosting the podcast with Mike, which was crazy. But where this all came from was I met Jesus in college. So I got baptized in college ministry. And so I immediately, in like my vision for the future, was I was going to go work for missions. I was going to possibly become a missionary. So I'm like, or work in the nonprofit space. I knew I wanted to work in that space. So I started raising my own support in my college ministry. So I was a missionary raising my support, and I had just come out of working and interning in a Methodist church. I grew up Catholic. I always say I am such a faith mutt. I have worked in every denomination, Baptist,
Which
Assemblies.
is what makes you beautiful.
Thank you. I'm like, what do we believe here? Do we drink? Do we dance?
All of it. All of it.
Exactly. I'm like, what's our rules here? Exactly. And I think that is the vision that I was always given from the get-go. Just what God was showing me was that it was like I was going to be a part of just a whole mix of ministries, that there wasn't going to be a single denomination, and that there was going to be like a great place to support people. So I don't know. I just always had missionaries in mind from the get-go. But at the same time, I was working in the nonprofit space, and it took a while for that vision to come to life. And it really wasn't until I met Mike before I was like, maybe there is a possibility I could specifically help missionaries on the front lines. And I just remember very specifically when we did meet, he goes, "Hey, you help missionaries, right?" I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Let's talk." Like, okay. But yeah, I think I've always had a heart for missionaries because I've never understood how they've gotten their training, who's training them, how are they even out on the mission field doing the work that they're doing. I was working for $1 billion nonprofit at the time. I had incredible training to be a fundraiser. And I just was seeing so many gaps in the system for missionaries to actually learn how to effectively fundraise for their mission.
Yeah. Mike, talk a little bit about this idea of the lies that the missionary tells themselves, because when you guys bring that out in the book, just the difference, even Mary, as you're talking of a nonprofit like the American Cancer Society doesn't think anything. So even that language of the nonprofit compared to a missionary, and yet this personal lie mindset work that's going on. Why did that become such a passion for you?
I remember my first recollection of that section. So we have this opening section in the book where we front loaded it with these lies that missionaries tell themselves. And this was actually written by our missionaries
That's what I
inside
loved
of our
about
group.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. We felt we don't have the right to say this. We're not missionaries, but we know a lot of them. Let's have them speak to this issue. I have a seminary degree, but we decided early on this is not going to be a theology book. There are other books out there with authors and teachers who are more well versed than us in that on those matters. And we didn't want to replace any of that. We wanted to come alongside some of the training that people were getting. We realized that they were getting a lot of theological, spiritual, scriptural training, and very little good advice on how to actually execute this. So my first recollection was we did a number of in-person workshops in the first couple of years pre-COVID. We did probably 3 or 4 of them. I remember some in San Diego, some in Nashville. Like we bounced around different cities. And I remember it was really Mary who was just ticked off. She's just upset that people were just like believing these things. And she's, I'm going to talk about a lot. That's my Mary impression. And real sweet and nice. And then just like this killer instinct. And we're like, oh, that's really good. At least I was like in the back, I was like, oh, this is good. We should use this. And then we asked some of our members to help us with it. Some who have multiple degrees, they've got their MDivs. I have my MA in biblical literature, but I haven't used that.
Which, by the
in a
way,
long
was
time.
a aha for me when I was reading this book. I'm like, okay, if you want to know the other side of Mike Kim, you have to read this book, because I found so many things out that I'm like, I knew some things about you in your journey and growth of faith. And I'm like, seminary, I did not know that. So
Yeah.
trivia.
Yeah. So that's how that section came about. And we felt it was important to lead with it because we didn't want to just write a nuts and bolts book either, but we wanted to say something a little bit different that was still really practical for the people we were coaching and we were guiding and that we were helping in the fundraising part. And Mary, like the whole book is built around Mary's framework from her first book. She's the fundraiser, I'm the marketing guy. So it was the best of both worlds with our audience, who I think was really good and maybe even God's plan, that we waited 7 years to write the book. I was like, this is crazy. This is 7 years since we met. This book is going to come out 7 years since we met and started working together. And we wanted the readers to feel like they weren't just hearing from two people who have careers in some other industry. We really wanted them to see how when all of us are together, we're unbeatable. And we never take that for granted. Like, we're on these Zoom calls and people are dialing in literally from all over the world. It's pretty incredible, from all different denominations. Like
And
she
if you
said, she was
hadn't
a
waited the 7 years, you would not have had even that section of the book, because you would have been guessing in some
correct.
ways at what's the lies. So this is the
Yeah,
knowing of your client. This is the knowing of who God sent you to help and to help move forward. Most missionaries probably aren't out there saying, gosh, I think I need a marketer. I think I need
correct.
someone to help me with marketing. There's another part I want to pull out. I help a lot of Christian coaches build their businesses and send them out. So this is some mindset work, right? But this idea of building a mission statement and the Christian jargon thing, that whether it's missionaries or coaches or whatever, can you help us for just a minute here? Coach us, coach me, coach the listeners, as both of you are great at this, to say, can we just cut all that out of there and say what you really want instead of fluff it up with all this stuff? Who wants to talk about Christian jargon?
I remember very specifically Mike being like, enough. Like, I think that you were like, I'm done with John 3:16 slapped at the top of every letter and every newsletter. Give me a Christian missionary newsletter that doesn't have a scripture at the top of the letter. And Mike was just like, I remember at one of those live workshops that we were at, and he just goes, it's lazy. And they were like, I mean, and it is, it's an easy way to start. It is lazy, but at the same time, it's like, that's all as Christians and believers, that we're supposed to grab scripture, and then there's truth attached to that scripture. So therefore, that's all you need.
On my soapbox for a minute, but if I'm going to say I'm a Christian, I hope that just shows up in my life through what I live, not by what I have to write on paper or put in a mission. Isn't that an unspoken? But yeah, say more about how you help them, though. People in this space, that if they say they're going to have a faith business or a faith mission or whatever, then it's like, I've got to put a scripture in. I've got to quote some great worship song. I got to do something that ties me there.
I remember that same workshop. I'm like, I was younger and more
Not
rash
you.
back then, Teresa. I've softened a little bit in the years since, but I remember somebody was sharing, well, we're an Acts 2 church. I'm like, what if they don't read Acts 2? What does that even mean? There are people that don't even know what Acts is.
Yeah.
That's how biblically illiterate we can be, but we still have to serve and meet people where they're at. Your slogan is the same thing I see every Sunday at the football game. John 3:16, same thing. Come on, we have to be a little bit more clear about this. I'm like that, though. I'm wired that way. And Teresa, you know this from just some of the personality tests that we've worked on together and things like that. I'm just like, just tell me what you want. Let's just get to the point a lot quicker. I remember when I went on staff at church and I was full-time there. It was my first real position at a church, like a full-time position. And I was the worship pastor at this church in Connecticut. And I took the position. Obviously, I felt led to do it, but there was a guy who's best friends with my youth pastor growing up, and he was a mentor to me. I remember sitting him down. He was the only one I could really be a little bit more myself with. And I asked him one day, we were having coffee. I was like, hey, man, where's the book of unwritten rules here? Can I get a copy? And he just laughed.
Yeah.
And I think that we all feel like there is some book of unwritten rules, whether you're growing up in a particular church, a denomination, a movement. I grew up in the charismatic church, which is very odd in my generation for a Korean American. Korean churches are by and large very conservative, Presbyterian, Methodist. Our church, we were 5 a.m. prayer meetings, speaking in tongues, casting out demons, sending kids on mission trips with no waivers, and laying hands on people in the street. And the language that fuels that from the pulpit was so sensationalistic. Eventually, I just couldn't stand it. The kingdom is coming. What does that mean? The glory of God is falling on this place. What does that mean? When God walks into a room, I was like, isn't he everywhere? So when I saw some of these mission statements, I knew that they were coming from a real, genuine place.
Absolutely.
You don't want to be ashamed. So why not slap a Bible verse on it? And Mary and I were both saying, guys, this doesn't help you stand out. We don't get to know what you're really doing. The kingdom come in Romania. What, how, where, when, who, why?
When you talk about this in your book, and both of you do, but that mission statement really tells me, as someone who's going to give funds to a missionary, what's going to happen with that, where it's going to go, whatever. Like, if I'm giving to a missionary, so I'll just speak as a donor, you don't have to convince me to be a believer, but you do have to tell me what your mission is. So what's interesting is, in the work I do, a lot of missionaries come to us to get training as coaches, and they still are struggling because that mindset of, I still have to be here. And yet there's this, I don't want to say business connection, but there's this clear part that can come across. Mary, how do you help them get that clarity? What happened in that work around that mission statement?
Yeah. So one thing that's very apparent is that there's some big organizations that are out there, some that have thousands of people who are basically using the mission statement of their main organization. Like, I'll just throw out a few, like YWAM or Wycliffe, or thousands and thousands of missionaries that are underneath those organizations. You have to get more specific about what it is that you're executing from that mission and what it is that you do that makes you stand out uniquely to the organization. I think that's where Mike just simplifies it inside of the book, making it really clear. Hey, what's your purpose? To glorify God. Okay, let's just use that. Let's simplify it and then get to the vision and then the mission. And we use a little bit more of, like, on the mission side of it being more like from the military kind of background and pulling in from that. So it's, hey, your mission can change, and missionaries change missions. Sometimes they're in the US, sometimes they're international, sometimes they're working in admin, sometimes they're supervising. And so when a shift happens, which it will, it always does, because these people are so willing to move on a dime that it's, oh, God woke me up in the middle of the night. We're moving to Africa. Okay. All right. Let's bring him in side. Exactly. And so then all of a sudden the mission is out. Oh, now everything I've done is out the door. And that's all. The mission assignment can change. Your vision stays the same. Your purpose stays the same. And so that's where it's like just simplifying it to the point where it's, you don't have to get overwhelmed by this terminology that they're using, but that's really where we work with them to simplify it and just make it like, what's your assignment today? And cast that vision to the people who you want to serve. And we encourage them to create just a one-page document that explains all that. And you're like, the one-page document, you can change it.
It's not written in stone.
You can edit the document. Your kids are going to get older and those pictures are going to get old real fast. Let's keep it up to date and just continuously move with them. But anyways, I think that we just give them permission to not be perfect.
Yeah.
I feel like that was one of our recent calls that we had. We were interviewing one of our students, Nora. We actually threw this whole video up on YouTube. So if somebody wants to watch it, they can on our YouTube channel for Fully Funded Academy. But Nora was just like, I asked her flat out, I'm like, Nora, did you do everything that Mike and I taught you perfectly? She just laughed and she's like, absolutely not. Nope. And that's the whole thing. We're not looking for perfection. We're just looking to come alongside you.
I would also add to that, Teresa, you mentioned earlier that you train coaches, and a lot of this is very common. Like, people come off the mission field, and I just want to say this directly to your audience here. You have incredible skills. You know how to listen with empathy. You are listening not just to this person and your own intellect, but to God. You're in that in-between liminal space. You know how to articulate your thoughts. You know how to give people clarity. These are all amazing skills. And what often happens is that if we put a scripture verse, boom, outright, it almost disempowers the people that you're ministering to, the people who are coming to you for therapy or counseling or coaching, or the people that you're approaching as donors, potential donors. It almost puts another barrier that says, there are some things you can't talk about. I imagine working with a client, they're going through an awful, horrific loss situation in their life. And you have these scriptures out on the door, and it almost makes them feel that they have their act together before they come and see you. Come into my office, swear if you want to, cry, let out the rage, punch the wall, let it out. That's what I'm here for as your therapist, as your counselor, as your guide. Not, you should have filtered that. You should have prayed before you come talk to me.
And it's the
Jesus
same
said,
with, yeah, you like your donors, and you guys know my story of I don't think I was able to get to that realness until God really walked me through some hard things. And I was on staff at a church at the time. And I always say, but when I sat on the jailhouse floor visiting my son who was in jail, I did more ministry there because it was a real conversation. Any of us, that authenticity, that realness, that if I'm going to give my funds to someone else, I want to know the real work they're doing. I just took someone to lunch a couple weeks ago, and she works on university campuses through, it would be like, oh, what is it that goes on campuses with college students? Only I wanted to know the stories. I wanted to know, what are you doing day to day? I want the
So
everyday life of, you guys shared so many stories in your book of the people. So no, I don't think the book could have been written 7 years ago. So in
yeah,
God's
thanks,
time,
Teresa.
it came
I
when it
believe
was.
that too.
Yeah.
I think that some of us have to have more patience than others. So it's just on me.
I want to shift gears. I want to talk about this partnership that the two of you have. You mentioned it. We laughed around about it in the beginning, but I also have such respect for the work that you all have done together, because I think it's a trust that even though Mary pursued you through email and your personalities come out so much, you have to read the book to hear kind of the whole story in the beginning of how you both bring your best selves to this place. But tell me about the trust piece, because it's not that, Mike, did you ever get to go to Mexico? I know last time we were even
no,
together.
she told me not to come. She was like, I'm too busy. You don't come. Don't, she literally was like, don't come.
I know.
It's
I
a bad
thought that that
time.
was where it was left.
Maya is going to school. I'm too overwhelmed. I'm just going to sit on the beach, but okay.
You are
Sure. There
welcome
you
now.
go.
Mike, you are
Howard.
welcome. Teresa,
You are
you are
welcome now.
I
We're both welcome.
refuse. Give
You're
me another
taking guests.
7
No.
years.
But what I love is that you could build a trust and a business, write a book together, do all of these things. Why is that?
Man, no one's ever asked me this, and I've never actually articulated this to Mary. We met at such an odd time in my life. I was going through this divorce, which was, you want to talk about, Teresa, you always talk about hair on fire. Like, this is everything on fire. Like, where did this come from? Why is this happening? And all these other opportunities were coming my way. Work was just going so well. Business was booming. I think I was in full-time business for myself at that point, around like the 3-year mark. And I had to find grounding again. My whole life was destabilized. I was not living where I was living. And I think when I met Mary, there was something very grounding about her. She knew who she was. She knew what she stood for. I think she's an Enneagram 3, and it complements me really well because I'm an 8. I don't push in certain ways. I let things come to me. And then she'll say, no, everybody should read our book. Everybody should come to our workshop. Every single person should be. And that's such 3 energy, Teresa. And I'm like, oh, I like this. But it was so grounding, and it helped me. Our relationship first was like a connection through work, which I think is the only way I actually would have been able to connect with anybody at that time. You know what I mean? Like, when I'm in chaos, I go to this analytical part of me, and I want to build things because it's predictable. And if I build it, and here we are right away building things together. She had great energy, great vibes. She always just heard me out, super supportive. She knew my work. Obviously, I didn't know she listened to 60 podcasts. I wouldn't. If I were her, I'll be like, man, I'm done with this joker after 3 podcasts. I sent him a few emails, but here we are. And then beyond that, it was definitely a God thing. There was no way this could have happened. And there were times where she would take the lead or I would take the lead. She always gives me all this credit for sketching out this thing on the napkin or whatever, but that's just what I do. But then she does what she does, which I could never do. We had a lot of good and deep conversations. One of the really special things was I never had to worry that I had to keep her away from certain friend groups that I had, that she wouldn't fit in, that they weren't right for her, or she wasn't right for them. She could vibe with anybody. And I think for me, that's really important in my trusted partnerships. I think I have a lot of range. in the kind of people that I can be friends with. Teresa, you know this because you're like this organizational, entrepreneurial coaching leader and super musical and dealing with all the far out there people,
Your
right?
creative side.
And Mary was able to hang with me in all of these environments. And that was a huge piece where I could trust her. And it's very few people in my life that I would trust in that regard. I could be like, hey, let's go to Puerto Rico for this high level mastermind with all these 9-figure entrepreneurial people, and they're all a little crazy. And she'd be like, sure, let's go. And she would just be herself. And I really
That's a
admired
key
that. Yeah.
phrase. Mary's sitting there going, oh, wow. What a gift, right? What a gift
Yeah,
for
yeah,
him
for sure.
to share. But the trust when you're going through some of the hard times that you were going through in that season of who's sticking with me, who's still showing up, who's calling me and saying, make good decisions and all those things. Mary, how about for you as you guys have developed that trust piece?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's really, thank you, Mike, for all the kind things that you said, because obviously felt a lot of that, right? But I was in a very different stage of my business, a different stage of life. And I think I was coming in as such a student. And so I remember Mike invited me to an event that he was hosting within months of us meeting each other. He's like, come, I've got all these entrepreneurs. They're my closest friends. He said, 40 people are going to be coming. They're my clients, my mentors, the people that I love. And my mom's going to be there. I was like, okay. So when I came, I felt very honored to be in that room. And I remember my book had just come out, right, when I had met him. And so he was like, from his stage, he tells everybody about my book. And I remember somebody standing next to us when he grabbed my book and was like, I'm going to go tell people about your book right now on his platform. He didn't have to do that. We barely knew each other at this point. He did not have to do that. And I remember this gentleman saying, I got a book. You can tell people about my book. And it was like, he was just kind of like, how about me, Mike? Me? And I'm like, why are you picking me? You don't have to talk about my book. And I just felt very much like that, like so honored and such a student in that season of my life that it was just like, I really admired Mike and the work that he had done. But I think the trust for me was that Mike has such a character, the way that it's not, Teresa, you probably know this too. It's like, he doesn't, like when you were like, I'm going to step away from your mastermind. He's, oh, no big deal. Like it's not because he doesn't value you. It's because he wants you to get what you need and go do what you're called to do. I'm not here because I'm trying to take something from you. I'm here to give something to you. So I remember, Mike, you saying something way back when about your hope is that you can grab somebody who's on a lower rung and like literally throw them above you. I was like, that's incredible to have that mindset that I'm not looking to make you under me. Continue to shine so bright and you need me for the rest of your life. I have all the answers. That's the gurus, right? That's what a lot of people are selling you these days. And Mike's, I'm just a guy trying to figure it out myself. And if I can help you out, I'm going to throw you up there and see what you can do. And that's the thing, I think, trust wise, like I've always known that Mike's going to make me look better than what I could. I'm like, I'll try my best to look good, but it's like Mike says all these, he's done it on this entire podcast. That's what he does. And so I think that's such a quality that I've always been drawn to. He's always safe. I've never questioned his integrity, questioned his decision making. I always know that when he puts my name on something, I know that it's going to be high quality. So I think all those things play into the trust factor. Like he owns every, I think we know way too much about each other and he has access to way too much that he could absolutely destroy me if he wanted to. But obviously
he has all the bank accounts. So I don't know. And she has all the bank accounts and the legal paperwork. So if I get hit by a bus, she's like, okay, I'll just find another part. But if she does, I'm like, I don't even know where anything is.
That is the trust. I've known both of you for a while and in deeper spaces and other places, but the authenticity and the fact that you've both continued to do your own work, your own development, your own journeys, your own growth spiritually and emotionally and personally, and never like, I've got this all figured out, either to the audiences that you serve, even the missionaries that you're serving in this audience or the other things that you do in other ways. It's never like, I've got this figured out, but I'm on the journey. That's a trust that I don't see very many people that have what the two of you have developed and brought. So there's another book in there somewhere, I'm sure.
Thank you. Another thing that we were grappling with, I'll say, is that putting a bunch of very famous Christian names on our book. And we both were in agreement that the people that we wanted to endorse the book were the people who have actually used the contents of the book. So every single endorsement is someone who has actually gotten fully funded through the book. So that meant a lot to us, that our students, our missionaries, they're the ones that are carrying the message.
I have a question for each of you before we wrap this up, because this came from the end of the book. So, Mike, you mentioned something, and this is not a space that you normally talk about in a lot of the work you do, but I could ask it on my podcast. Psalm 109:27. Tell me, you said, let them know it's your hand, that you, Lord, have done it. Why that one?
I recorded a worship album, like an independent one, when I was 25 years old. Oh my God, that was 21 years ago, 22 years ago. Wow. Where did the time go? And I don't know, I found that scripture, and that was a very authentic project. Almost every song on this album I wrote, and we used at my youth group. And I had no training in songwriting or writing anything. And then it's totally independently produced. And I had some friends play on it, some friends record it and engineer it. And I was like, I couldn't have done this. And I just found that scripture. And later on, I was like, is this taken out of context or anything? If you read the whole chapter, it's just, hey, you did great things, or I did something. I want them to know that it was you. And I've only felt that way about 3 projects. That was one of them. The second was my book, You Were the Brand. And the third was this one. I have had other projects in between that were just good business decisions or follow-ups to that album just because you're supposed to do that. But they never felt that authentic to me. Whereas this one did. And I look back, and what did all of those have in common? They all were slow marinades. A really long time. Stuff that was proven. Songs that worked in my youth group. This You Are the Brand book that worked with all my business and coaching clients for a long time. That was also delayed by 5 years because I signed this book deal and I went through this divorce. And so I didn't have the energy to write it. And then this fully funded book maybe got delayed for a couple of years or whatever, but not for a particular reason. I think we were just supposed to slow cook it. And when it finally was done, I don't think Mary knows this. Like, when it was finally done and released, I actually got a little sad, like really almost a low grade depression, because I felt like I didn't have anything left to do. And it was almost like, oh, I can die now, like in peace. I'm not trying to be morbid, but I'm like, anything and everything that I've experienced up until this point in my life, I have faithfully discharged as a duty, put out into the world in a format that anyone, as long as the internet is around, which I think it will be as long as we don't destroy ourselves as human beings, right, is out there in the world that God can put into people's hands well after I die if he wants. It can, like, we can become recognized for it maybe while we're still alive, but none of that matters to me.
It's life work.
Yeah.
And that's what that passage really is saying.
Yeah.
Let them know that it's in your hands, Lord. You've done it. And it's life work. You've named 3. I would say God probably has more. I always say this. We read in scripture about these weird little people that we're like, we get one story from them. Mary and Joseph, they did one thing. Oh, let's see. It was baby Jesus. That's a big deal. And then I'm like, I think like you, Mike, was that it? Was that all? Was that my life work? And I don't believe that it is.
I think I'm picking back up again, and it's been really fun to just now take the book, and it's given us a lot of new energy around it. I'm like, hey, let's start a YouTube channel. Let's pull our energy to that, because I feel like we got this done. It's out there. We're going to tell people about it. They will find it. But yeah, that was huge for me. And that I didn't go to church regularly during these years. I was on the road a lot. I moved away. I didn't actually have a place of my own until a couple of years ago. So I was just a vagabond. I was just wandering around. But that call every second and fourth Wednesday of the month when I could join and was anchoring me to that community of faith and people who are a little bit more like me, who are also vagabonds and ragtag and swashbuckling and just doing unconventional things. Whereas in the environment I grew up at church was very, this is how you do things. You wear a suit and tie. So maybe I found my people or myself in these people as well. And yeah, it was a very special project and I got it done. And Mary and I got it done. And then she didn't invite me to the house to celebrate, but that's okay.
Mary, following up on that in some ways, you talk about in the end that, and Mike's kind of picking up on it too, that it's difficult to express, but it was a full circle journey. What does that mean for you when you say this is full circle?
Well, I think our relationship too is that it was like back to, I know he says, oh, I just jotted all this stuff down on a sheet of paper. But for me, it was like shocking to see that something that was written 7, 8 years ago was now coming to a completion almost. We even said that we're like, this is the final piece of what we came here to do. I have additional vision that Mike and I are both working towards as well. I would love to see coordinator kits and workbooks in the hands of all of our missionaries. I don't want to be strapped to the internet. And so looking forward to, the book was just a key component to getting to this final piece of getting our materials into the hands of people all over the world. And just that kind of coming full circle around the ideas and the vision that we had for it. I'm big on the goal setting. And there's just something really sweet about finally, like you have this, I can't tell you how many years. And I had 3 goals that I had written down, and it was book baby Bruno. And book baby Bruno, this was on everything that I wrote, book baby Bruno. And the baby thing was like, maybe God's going to give me a baby one day, maybe. And Bruno is my house. Bruno is my house in St. Louis that we built. And then this book was like this final piece. So it was like, come on, God, we got this book. We got to get this done. So anyways, it just was, yeah, absolutely full circle. And all 3 of those pieces ultimately came together. That's all I can say.
Such good stuff, friends. If you had to say one word, Mike, word or two that just describes the last year of doing this project, what's it grown in you?
Meaning. A lot of meaning. To elaborate on that, I think it was something that, like, it was an expression and a culmination and something that we created out of a lot of these shared experiences through the years. And we did a lot of hard work to make this happen. But I also feel like it was like a seed that we can plant in other things. And what we do together logically doesn't make any sense. I have my own business practice. So does Mary. We're in completely different markets, but for some reason, this really
Different
works.
countries. Yeah.
Different
Minor
countries.
detail, but
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it does. And there's something I can't quantify to that, but it's a beautiful thing. And like, we're stuck now together. She's going to be at my funeral or me at hers, whoever goes first. So probably me, but you know, it's a life thing now.
Yeah.
And we connect over the work. And as a result of this, we connect in our lives, family, personal, everything going on. She tells me when the girl that I'm meeting, she's, no, that's not it. She tells me that kind of stuff. She shoot off a girl at one of the restaurants we were at in San Diego all those years ago. She's, I don't like her. I was like, why? She just came up to talk to me. She lives in Tijuana. She's like, no, make wise decisions. And then she just did that.
There was the make
one of
wise
those things.
decisions.
So it's a beautiful journey in a friendship. I'm so glad. I'm so grateful. I have beautiful friendships, but this one is different. There's something anointed about it.
Yeah, it's a good word. Mary, how about for you? What's the word you would take from the past year of this journey?
Yeah, the word that came to me was faith. It was like a confirmation of like promises that I feel like the Lord has shown me over many years, like years before meeting Mike. It was like things that he's shown me when I was 21-year-old, where it's okay, you're going to work with people of different faiths and you're going to come together. It was like, this has just been such confirmation, our time that we've gotten to work on this project. And then to see like the book. And by the way, the book has done significantly better than my first book. And so it's just incredible because we have not done a ton of promotion. We haven't done a lot of mass marketing. It's literally word of mouth and people who are just telling their friends about the work that is there and that here's this book. It's a great resource for your people. And so I feel like we're a little bit of an underground railroad, like sending people this information in closed nations. And P.S., everything that Mike and I teach in our academy, Mike was like, we're putting it all in this book. And I was like, this is crazy. Most people would never do that. But like templates, resources, like everything is in this book because we're like, if something happens to us, if something happens to the internet, it's all in the book. Take it, use it. But yeah, faith. I would say faith is my word for sure.
I have had the privilege of watching from afar and knowing both of you in different places and spaces and just watching God move through both of you. Mike, when you said the word meaning, I know that you just went on a mission trip and we're just with a friend of ours, James, and I could just see that even from the pictures afar, just glowing out of you of, I knew that the book was written. I knew it was done. And here you are in Africa, bringing water to the surface and doing all these things and the smile on your face and just that word meaning that you just shared. Yeah, just was glowing from you of all this crazy story that both of you have had individually and comes together, just really shows up in between the lines. So thank you for writing it, for the work that you're both doing and how you're allowing God to just use your lives and your talents and your gifts and abilities. If they want to connect with you more, because everybody listening, you know someone who needs this book or it's you. So they need to know all the places and spaces to get in touch with both of you or you as a whole.
Yeah, fullyfundedacademy.com. The book is on Amazon. We independently published it just through Amazon, so it's only available on Amazon. We do live trainings 3 times a year, and we do one in the spring, one at the end of summer, and one at the end of the year. And so if you happen to catch this and it's not one of those times, you can read the book or listen to the audiobook or whatnot. But if you happen to catch this and you're on our email list at one of those times, we do live trainings 3 times a year. So yeah. Email Mary, don't email me.
Mary, I got a response to email.
Check email. I have 10,000 unread emails. I'm just not a productivity guy.
My email is mary@fullyfundedacademy.com.
We better get that in there. I would say too, connect to their YouTube channel, like just to get to know them better, to hear these stories that are out in the field, doing the work and doing the things and how they've used this process. So thanks, you guys. This is a great moment and a great conversation. Thanks for being with me today.
Thank you for having us.
Guys.